We have been having annual Biosafety Conference. This is the 11th one, coming within a backdrop when the government has lifted the ban that has been there for 10 years on the importation and use of genetically modified foods. In essence, therefore, we have mounted this conference as part of a public awareness and education campaign to make the science known, to make the regulatory framework known, so that we can give our people comfort and confidence that the science is good. It is being conducted by our own scientists in Cairo, in Kenyatta University. And again, the regulatory framework that is enshrined within the Biosafety Act is sufficiently robust to assure the safety of human health, the safety of animal health, and an adequate protection of the environment.
The theme of this conference, harnessing agricultural biotechnology through effective biosafety management system, could not come at a better time. It is very apt, and we need to get through this conversation so that we get our people get the right thing. If we travel, when we travel outside, I'm sure that we get a taste of some of these products of biotechnology, GMOs and so on. But let our people know why they have to adopt the system.
So what we are doing is to create public education and public awareness so that first the public, and you know the public is broad. We have the public people who are, for example, in the media practice. We have legal practitioners. We have medical practitioners. We also have policymakers in the way of members of parliament, members of county assemblies who need particular packaged information. So what we have done, we are rolling out as part of this conference, a coordinated and a well-structured public education and engagement program.
The seminar organizers, the Biosafety Authority of Kenya, has identified and engaged scientists from across Africa, and they have been able to give us a lot of information in this field. This is one field that is fairly unknown. Let me say that there isn't sufficient knowledge on genetic engineering specifically. There are a few myths and misunderstandings that people have been suffering, and therefore the reason why we take GMOs as if they are very strange animals from some planet. First of all, this science came through other countries and organizations. It was a domain of multinationals, but it has been fully and completely adopted by our scientists, our universities, our research organizations, our regulatory bodies, and they are able to not only isolate genes and pass genes from one organism to another, which is transgenic, or what we call the recombinant, identifying genes that can move from one organism to another. They have gone further, and they are doing what is called genome mapping, and also what is called gene sequencing, getting genes and putting them in a perspective to define a function or a characteristic.
This conference is being hosted against the backdrop of a number of significant events within the modern biotechnology development and the biosafety regulatory spheres in Kenya. First is the lifting of the 10-year ban on the importations of use of genetically modified foods. The second is the transfer of the National Biosafety Authority from the Ministry of Education to the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development through the Executive Order Number 1 of 2023. The lifting of the ban initiated a great public interest in the whole subject of genetically modified organisms, known as GMO. On the other hand, the transfer of the authority to the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development has given fresh impetus to the application of the modern agricultural biotechnology for enhancing agricultural productivity in contributing to food and nutrition security.
We are working in this area as scientists, very credible scientists, and having worked several years, a number of us are not very young, and we would be very foolish to do things that will be against our grandchildren. So when we put our necks on the line, we know what we are talking about.
I want to ask you these questions, members. If you give birth to a child and you take that child to a doctor for vaccination, is it because you are doubting that God never finished the work? What is this? Why do you take your kids for vaccination and you have no problem with it? It is because you want the kid to be injected so that they have either attenuated or just the subunit vaccines that we currently have, so that it runs in the blood, so that if the real disease comes, it will find when the blood has sufficient antibodies to hit that particular pathogen. And you think we are happy with doing that for our kids, and you think we cannot immunize mango tree, maize, a plant, honestly, and we are happy with that happening, you know, for our babies. Somebody's lying. The only reason why you don't see us injecting, because, you know, maize in an acre is almost several thousands, and therefore going injecting each of them will be tiresome. And that's what we are saying. Why can't we take that toxin genetically, move it into the genome? That's what BT does. So that the genome, the blood equivalent of maize, which we call sap in plants, is now having that toxin running, so that if the pest comes, eats it, that is the pest that dies.
Nevertheless, I think there are a number of improvements that we think should be followed up, and having our dear parliamentarians in the House, there is an area of amending the Environmental Coordination Act and the accompanying regulation number 150, which categorizes modern biotechnology as a high risk. High risk then means that we have to do the EIA, which is a duplication because it's already factored in the Biosafety Act. And then the other one is amend the Biosafety Act to include regulation of emerging technologies, such as genome editing and synthetic biology, gene drivers, and microbial dual-use research. The important thing here is that these GMO technologies have been with us more than 26 years. Kenya, we are lagging behind when everybody else is running. Now we are not even talking about GMOs, we are talking about gene editing, we are talking about newer sciences that other countries are running with to feed their people. Yet we are still struggling with the GMOs. So it is important that we capture, we don't lose again the time that we have lost over the years, but capture what we can run together with the rest of the world.